Atlanta City Council has approved a $2 million settlement to two college students who were shocked with tasers and pulled from a car in 2020. The confrontation happened while the students Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim were stuck in downtown Atlanta traffic caused by protests. The City Council voted 13-1 yesterday to approve the payment to settle a federal lawsuit filed by Young and Pilgrim in June 2021, where they argued the police had no justification for the traffic stop. Lawyers for Young and Pilgrim in statements applauded the city for agreeing to the settlement. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court decided yesterday that former President Donald Trump is immune from prosecution for so-called official acts while in office, but could still be found liable for actions that lower court judges would deem unofficial acts. Georgia State law professor Anthony Michael Christ spoke to GPB yesterday about how the ruling would impact the Fulton County election interference case against the former president.
There's an added layer of complexity today that wasn't present yesterday in the Fulton County case. But at the end of the day, the overwhelming majority of the charges and pieces of evidence will stand.
The move is expected to delay a federal election interference case until after the November election. 5 members of a Georgia family visiting Cooperstown, New York for a baseball tournament died when their small plane crashed in a rural part of New York. Authorities say Laura and Ryan Van Epps, 2 children, Ryan and James and Harrison Van Epps, and Laura's father and pilot Roger Beggs died in the crash. A statement from a family member on social media calls it a, quote, unimaginable loss. You're listening to GPB.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Analysts are poring over the U.S. Supreme Court's decision yesterday on presidential immunity. The High Court ruled presidents cannot be put on trial for exercising their core constitutional powers, and it said former presidents also get this presumption of immunity. The ruling may mean difficulty for special counsel Jack Smith. He's prosecuting former President Donald Trump on 4 counts of trying to overturn the 2020 election. Kim Whaley is a law professor with the University of Baltimore. She explains the ruling means special counsel Smith might not be able to use evidence he's gathered against Trump.
The immunity doesn't just mean dismissal of the counts. The immunity goes to the actual evidence. That is, the jury cannot hear evidence that falls within the scope of immunity. So, for example, the justices said for sure communications with the Department of Justice are absolutely immune. So I think Jack Smith's team have to now go back and look at all the evidence that it gathered to support the 4 counts and that it submitted to the grand jury and decide if you take the stuff off the table that the Supreme Court said is now immune, do we still have enough to go forward?
She spoke to NPR's All Things Considered. In another high court ruling, the justices said social media companies have a First Amendment right to moderate content. As NPR's Bobby Allen reports, that decision sends 2 social media cases back to lower courts for review.
Laws in Texas and Florida sought to prevent what lawmakers viewed as anti-conservative censorship on social media. The laws were passed in 2021 after former President Trump was suspended from several social media sites following the January 6 attack on the Capitol. Santa Clara University law professor Eric Goldman says the justices made clear that governments can't tell social media sites what to do.
When governments engage in censorship, even if it's, quote, to level the playing field, then that solution is worse than any potential bias that might be exhibited.
Goldman says the court handed Silicon Valley a win by signaling that policing their own platforms is protected by the First Amendment. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
The National Hurricane Center says Hurricane Beryl is still at its top level, a Category 5 storm. Top sustained winds are at 165 miles per hour. Beryl made landfall yesterday in Grenada, and it's expected to crash over Jamaica tomorrow. NPR's Michael Copley reports climate change is making hurricanes stronger.
Grenada's prime minister said the island of Carriacou was flattened. It's the earliest in the year hurricanes ever reached that size in the Atlantic Ocean. The storm's being fueled by record warm ocean water, and those record temperatures are being driven by climate change. Burning fossil fuels releases gases like carbon dioxide, which trap heat and make the air in oceans warmer. Beryl's expected to remain near major hurricane strength as it passes Jamaica Wednesday and the Cayman Islands Thursday. Michael Copley, NPR News.
This is NPR. President Biden will get a briefing today on extreme weather and give remarks afterwards. He's Trump's administration is releasing a new rule today to protect millions of workers in the U.S. from extreme heat. Employers will be directed to develop plans to deal with heat hazards. The 2023 wildfire season was one of the lightest in years in the U.S., but federal forecasters say we're likely in for a different season this summer. The Mountain West News Bureau's Murphy Woodhouse has more.
Vast swaths of the American West, including large portions of Oregon, Idaho, Arizona, and New Mexico, are expected to have above-average wildfire potential through September. In July, much of Mississippi and Alabama, as well as parts of the Carolinas and Mid-Atlantic, will see the same. That's according to the latest wildfire outlook from the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. Jim Wallman, a meteorologist there, says that a repeat of last year or an epic season like 2020 are both unlikely.
We're expecting something in between, so a busy season, but nothing exceptional.
He chalks up much of the expected increased activity to 2 wet winters and the subsequent growth in grasses, what he called a good recipe for active fires. Total acres burned so far this year are already nearing last year's total. For NPR News, I'm Murphy Woodhouse in Boise.
Fire departments around the country can now apply to test out new technology to help first responders see through dark smoke. It's a helmet-mounted indoor visualization and navigation device. It has a high-speed thermal camera. If a firefighter gets lost or disoriented, the system can help the firefighter backtrack or offer turn-by-turn guidance. I'm Corva Coleman, NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BritBox, dedicated to helping people discover British crime series, including new seasons of Silent Witness, Blue Lights, and The Responder starring Martin Freeman. Streaming at BritBox.com/NPR.
This is Layla Faldin, co-host of NPR's Morning Edition. One of the things you can count